the audience has heard the acronym PWA before? All right, about 2/3 maybe. How about AMP? Okay, very good. In the context of accelerated mobile pages, not at a guitar amp, perhaps. I guess Mike and the Mechanics were playing here a couple days ago. They had amps back here. This is the other kind of amp, accelerated mobile pages. And we're going to discuss something today called PWA and AMP, putting them together, how this pattern is powerful, elegant, and easy to do. And I'll show you an example of how to do this called the shadow reader. The first question is, why? Progressive web apps are these immersive, full-screen app-like experiences on the web, and accelerated mobile pages are best known for somewhat simpler kinds of pages, maybe for publishers, maybe a way to get into Google's AMP cache, and in general, kind of a simplification of the web for performance reasons. So how do these things fit together? And why bother with this? It's because of what I call the web app dilemma. So let's go back about 18 years ago. Back then, web pages were simple. If there was any complexity, it was on the back end. You had your Perl, maybe some PHP making things happen, generating HTML. The front end was HTML, just HTML, maybe some CSS, which was brand new back then, and not a whole lot of this cute little language called JavaScript. And JavaScript wasn't like a real language. It was like a toy language back then. It was used for little things. Remember this thing over here? You could move your cursor over the button, and it would change color. That was pretty cool. That was JavaScript. That was pretty easy. Today, it's more complicated. There's a lot to learn, a lot of choices. You can make a very, very full-featured front-end web app with many, many different frameworks, all kinds of JavaScript. It can get pretty complicated. And when it gets complicated, there's some downsides to that. This might be you. Maybe you're spending a lot of time learning new technologies, maintaining a complicated app, trying to follow all your callbacks, tracing through all the code, trying to do various tweaks to get things to perform better. And speaking of performance, unfortunately, for your convenience as a developer, the user pays a price. So notice how web apps have gotten bigger in the last 6 years. They've more than tripled in size. A lot of that is things like images, video, but also JavaScript has gotten very, very big. Do you have a site right now that has 15, 20, maybe 30 JavaScript files on it, 400K of JavaScript, maybe some large frameworks that are loading before anything happens, using up CPU time, using up battery power? It takes a lot these days for a good web app. I was thinking about this actually yesterday while walking around the city, and this is a picture I took here in Krakow. And there's music that's supposed to be playing. Oh, there it is. Lovely Mozart. So why are we playing Mozart right now at a developers conference? Because when I saw the architecture here, it reminded me of the movie Amadeus. Anybody seen the movie Amadeus before? Amadeus, anybody? It's about Mozart's life. I used to be a music professor, and I showed this to my students every year because otherwise they didn't really grasp classical music. They couldn't stand classical music. But Mozart, I was thinking about elegance and beauty and things like that. And maybe we can make it a little quieter, the music. Mozart's getting louder and louder. Elegant, beautiful things are important. They endure. Simplicity is good because when things are simple, they're more maintainable also for your users. Elegance also means you have fewer bugs. In 5 years, your code will still work. So simplicity actually matters. Elegance matters. And isn't one of the goals of life making something beautiful? That's one of the goals also of this PWA AMP pattern, helping make things beautiful and simple and elegant, again, on the web. So, well, if the web is too hard, can I make an app instead? Wouldn't that be easier? If you saw Sam's talk today, you know that almost all the time users spend in apps is in a few major apps, their Gmail, their Facebook, their WhatsApp. If you're making an app out there, the chances are very small people will ever use it or download it because, as Sam was saying before, the average number of apps a user installs in the average month is 0. So the web is still a pretty important thing on mobile phones and will not go away anytime soon. So maybe make a simple website. That's not going to work. Users expect something better these days. They want a real web app experience. What do? Like a baby, we can cry. Or maybe there's an easier way, happy baby. Is there one? There's not. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Wait. I've got some more slides to show. I'm just kidding. I think the easier way here is PWA and AMP. What is that? PWA, you've seen before, the talks today, provides an app-like experience on the web. I won't go into this in detail, you've seen this before, but things load quickly, they're engaging, as a good app would be. They're quick, users aren't waiting around, they work offline, all these things people expect from mobile phone experiences, like they're on messaging, like they're on some other app. They want these things also from a website, a fast, good experience. So what is AMP? Accelerated Mobile Pages. People think about it sometimes as this thing that was started for publishers. Most major publishers in the world use AMP in some way or another. But it's more than that. It's not just for publishers. It isn't just a way to actually make simplified web pages or to get into Google's search AMP carousel or make Google happy in some way. It's a new pattern to make the web easier and simpler and faster for users and also for all of you. What is AMP? A brief summary. It's an ecosystem for fast, beautiful, responsive pages. As you've heard earlier today, there's over 2 billion pages on the web that use AMP. Over 1 million domains now use AMP. AMP helps enforce good performance and good looks. It's basically a response to the bloat on the web. It's making things simpler, easier again. It doesn't cover all cases, but it covers most cases. Very few web pages right now would lose that much if converted to AMP. Even though the first thing up there, AMP allows you to write no JavaScript. No JavaScript at all. So we had a little bit of applause. Probably some people are crying. People are clapping. Yes, you're free, you're free. You can still use JavaScript, but not on an AMP page. It's already there. Because if you want things that are interactive, that are easy to use, if you want things like image carousel where the images just slide around on the screen, users can't stand these things, but they're very popular, or you want a video embedded, or you want a menu, all these things come with AMP. You just insert web components. So that's the second thing up there. It's a superset of HTML, a set of custom web components that do all those things that don't come with HTML, but that should. HTML was designed a long time ago for documents, not for making complicated web apps, but with AMP, you get back to actually putting all those things that you want into HTML. You lose some flexibility, but you gain a lot of ease of use, and you're coding less. You can code other places. And if you love CSS, I'm sorry to tell you this, it also restricts your CSS to 50K or less, which really, honestly, is enough for most pages out there, probably all pages. The idea behind all these things, no JavaScript, web components, and less CSS, is to make the pages faster. So for users, AMP pages tend to load, even on 3G connections, in a second, in 2 seconds, which users tend to like quite a bit, and which makes your company's money. It's good. And don't forget the elegance thing as well. Your pages, your code is more beautiful. It's simpler. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already there for you as part of AMP. It sounds kind of hard, right? I've got to learn 2 new things, PWA and AMP. I can't do that. I don't have time. Well, actually, it's not as hard as it sounds. And to prove that, we've created a simple example called the shadow reader. Whenever I say shadow, I'll say it like this typeface over here, the shadow reader, because I have no shame. So let's say that you work for a major news publisher, and you've got a website that's out there, but the boss knows people want to use a web app. They're sick of the website, sick of the slow transitions between pages. He wants a newsreader app. So your assignment from this very, very stern-looking boss over here, you're the person there with a hat, is to make a web app out of existing web pages. The site already uses AMP. So how do we do that? How do we take things that already exist, those AMP pages, and get those into a nice, immersive, progressive web app experience? Well, PWA/AMP is your answer. So why are AMPs useful in a progressive web app context? Let's discuss a couple of ways AMP can be used that haven't been used so much so far, but ways AMP is starting to be used now, which play on AMP's strengths as web components library. So first of all, we'll discuss how AMP can be used as web components. Second, as rich data. And third, AMP pages can be portable, embeddable content units that you can embed in other pages, thanks to the magic of Shadow DOM. I love that name, Shadow DOM. First of all, AMP as web components. This actually is kind of obvious. AMP is really a library of web components. Here are some examples of those things. Here's one over here. Let's say you want to make one of those lovely image sliders that users, again, tend to object to, but people love these things. And there it is. That's an entire carousel. That's done. So AMP carousel, you must specify width and height in AMP because the pages are laid out in advance. So as things load and lazy load, the page doesn't shift around. So all of your dimensions for images, ads, everything else are specified in advance. And there's a couple of images with the AMP image tag, and you're done. There it is, your carousel. Things lazy load, it's all good. You're done. Number two, AMP as rich data. This is kind of a weirder idea, but kind of a cool idea once you get the idea. Idea is a good word to say several times in a row. AMP can be used as rich data. So often if you're making a web app, you've got your app shell of some sort, and you're loading in JSON, and then converting that JSON to HTML using templates, using some sort of logic. This can be a fragile, difficult process. So instead of doing that, you can use HTML itself as the data. It's a rich data source that includes layout information, includes components. It's like a whole page layout. It's kind of like Markdown on steroids. It's this really powerful, rich, beautiful data set. So what I mean by that, here's a typical example. Let's say you have this article in your web app that you're making over here, and there's some Bianco ancient babies I've heard of that apparently aren't very good, and you have an article about that, usual data sources, data, whatever. Here's how it might look on the bottom over here. Maybe you have an image of a guitar, maybe you've got an H2, a link, maybe you've got an ad in there. This is like data. So you can pull this in to your web app, which goes along with the idea that AMP can be portable, embeddable content units. So you can grab some part of a page, which is AMP, and stick it into your progressive web app. So again, taking an AMP page or some AMP stuff and using that in a different application. So you can actually take your web pages that exist and cram those things into a web app. And here you are with your hat thinking, this is the key to my project over here. I don't have much time. I can use this pattern, taking our existing AMP pages and putting those into my new immersive PWA. But how? The first key to this is the magic of Shadow DOM. So Shadow DOM is simple and kind of cool and magical. It's simply a DOM subtree that's fully encapsulated inside an HTML element. All the HTML, all the CSS is living inside an element in the DOM, Shadow DOM. It's part of the web components idea. And AMP comes in a version called Shadow AMP, which allows an entirely valid accelerated mobile page to exist inside another page. This allows you to AMP just one subsection of a web page, which we're going to need in our app we're making today. How does this work? On the top over there, you see we're loading up not the usual AMP library, but the Shadow AMP library. And then on the bottom, you see we're going to actually, once AMP exists, we're going to just attach Shadow doc over there. 3 arguments: the container, where the Shadow root should be, the document itself, and the URL from which the document came originally. The complicated thing here is this is loaded asynchronously. So you can't call attach Shadow doc until it's actually loaded. So we use this asynchronous callback pattern to do that. You see in the middle that function we've defined called AMP_ready, which takes the callback, and simply it looks for a global called AMP. If that global already exists, it adds that callback to an array of callbacks. If it doesn't exist, it defines that as an empty array. So this way, as AMP is still loading, you can keep on attaching callbacks to this object. When AMP actually loads up, it then finds these callbacks, and then it runs everything. It may sound complicated, but it actually isn't that complicated. I'll say it again more simply with fewer words. You load the shadow amp asynchronously. Once it's loaded, you can then use the attach shadow doc method to actually attach your amp document somewhere inside an existing page. Let's take a look at this now, because it's getting pretty abstract. Let's go over to the demo over here. And interesting. My computer logged out during this time. There it is, it's back. So this is the shadow reader. Here it is. In this case, it uses the Guardian as the data backend. All the news here is kind of depressing today, so I apologize for that. There's two modes for this. This is the cards mode. So this just shows top stories from the Guardian as a series of cards. And then clicking into a card, we'll look for one that's not bad and scary. Here we go. A black hole. That's kind of cool. It's not scary yet. Clicking on that, you see a bit of an animation, and it pops out, and there's the article mode, the second mode of this application. There it is, an enormous black hole. Not a problem for a long time, as far as we can tell. And by the way, this bottom over here is all the AMP page. That's all AMP. If you go back over here, you're back here. There are sections, and so on. If we look at this here, we can see in the HTML, which is very small, unfortunately. If you can see this, at the very bottom, there's a thing called article over here. And somewhere in there, if you can see it, this is called shadow root. And in there is an entire AMP page just hiding in there. And there's the body, all the content there on the shadow root. I know this is very hard to see, but try it out. amp.cards is out there. It's public. You can use it. Check this out. The code is out there, too. Check it out. See how it's built. Let's go back to the slides now. We're going to talk more about how this thing is built. How is this thing built? As we discussed already before, there's your AMP page living within the PWA. That's the real key. And three things happen. The first thing is that AMP content gets pulled in from an RSS feed, and then we inject the AMP HTML right into the DOM. And then around all that is a lovely progressive web app making this nice immersive experience we were talking about here. Here's the first step, not that complicated. You pull the AMP content in from the feed. And you can see here we actually use the good old XHR over here because you can use fetch, but the advantage of XHR is that the response XML is actually a parsed DOM. So once you get this back, you've got a whole document object. You can just tick that right into the DOM of the main page. This is very convenient. And we're going to remove parts we're not going to use over here. So notice on the top, for example, the Guardian has this header. We don't want to see that as part of this app experience. You just remove things from the DOM you don't want. You take out sidebars, take out headers, just to get the part that you actually need. Step 2, we inject the AMP HTML into the DOM. Not that complicated. We create a shadow root and use that magical attach shadow doc to actually, again, take that AMP document and stick it right there into the shadow DOM. And then, all around that is a nice progressive web app, which has the kind of features you want from progressive web apps. It loads quickly with an app shell. As the app moves around, as you navigate through the app, things go on loading quickly. The experience is immersive throughout, like an app would be. You have the possibility on Android of adding to the home screen and an app-like display, taking away the whole URL bar. And content is available also offline. How do those things work? Quickly, the first thing over here is that the initial load is pretty simple. Let me show you over here again, if I can get back to the computer here. The actual original payload over here that comes with this. A lot of CSS. The HTML is pretty simple. A couple of things here, and then notice as we go along here, see if I can zoom there a little bit, you see these little tildes over there. See those things? If you used Facebook, for example, and you've seen when you're loading your feed, those little things appear with rectangles that kind of resemble actual things in your feed, but they aren't things in your feed, they're just actually an animation. So it gives the user the impression things are loading when they're actually not really there quite yet. Users like that if things are partially loaded and they get to see it kind of load. This is like that, but just pure text. So before any images load at all, anything loads at all, you've got something there that kind of resembles how the app's going to look. A set of lovely tildes. Let's go back now to the slides, please. Thank you very much. So yeah, simple initial load over there. And that thing at the top over there is so I can tell whether it's actually from the URL in cards mode or article mode and apply the right kind of UI skeleton so you have that nice kind of loading in the beginning. And then, of course, as the app moves along, things load fast because you've got AMP pages. AMP pages load very fast. They're very simple. And you use Shadow DOM to get those things into your PWA. Then the immersive experience is pretty easy to do. I'm going to go back to the demo here one last time. We can see these lovely animations over here. Again, this is just a normal web app, so you can make nice things happen. When you click on this black hole over here, it animates upwards nicely. When you change articles, things merge around smoothly. There's also stuff here for accessibility, for screen readers. All those things are easy to do because you've got all the power of PWAs and CSS and all those things. And again, try it out yourselves at home if you'd like to. Let's get back to the slides over here. And this part is easy for the PWA. You've got a manifest. So for Android, those icons over there let you add things to the screen, the home screen that is, and then display standalone just tells Android to display the app in a full immersive app experience. This part is super simple. Finally, offline content. This can be a little challenging. When you do service worker, the caching may be a little bit complicated sometimes. It involves some coding, some promises, things like that. But in this case, it was very simple. We used Workbox as a bit of a workaround over here. I recommend trying out Workbox.js, a great service worker library. And this, by the way, is the only library that was used in the making of this whole web app. There was no Angular, no React, not even jQuery. The code here is incredibly small to make this happen. In fact, minimized is about 10K of JavaScript behind the scenes. That's it, about 10K. Workbox makes things very simple. Over here is the code to cache our lovely YQL queries. That's all you do. Register your route, declare your strategy, and you're all done. The service worker stuff here is maybe 30 lines of code. So there's offline content. And we also pre-cache some things like images, other things that are important for the app. And like I was just saying a minute ago, there was no framework used in the making of this app, not even jQuery. I mean, these things over here are samples from the code. They're a little bit ponderous in some cases. Document.query selector, remove attribute, all these things. jQuery makes it a little simpler, but this is just to show we didn't need jQuery for this. You still have pretty small code. It's pretty simple. It's just JavaScript, but not much JavaScript. A little bit like the old days. So this is good. You made the web app. The boss likes you. You can keep your job. Triumph, happiness, all those things. So you're happy. Then you think, great, I've made this awesome PWA. But is this AMP, though? I thought this AMP thing was important because I have to get into Google's search carousel and the AMP cache and all those things and make Google happy in some way. But this is not an AMP over here. I've made this normal web page. So is that OK? Can I do that? And yes, you can. Who cares? Go ahead and do it. In this case, the main app would not pass AMP validation. It isn't supposed to, but it's fast. It uses AMP. And just works really, really well. If you want to actually get into Google AMP cache on the first page of your application, there's a pattern for that. The first page can also be an AMP. The entry page, landing page, can be an AMP. And actually, AMP has an install service worker component. You can use install service worker to get your PWA started behind the scenes. They can navigate to the next page, which is the PWA, and then you can use AMP within that again. So again, you can use these things in various ways to get all the benefits of AMP, to get the pre-rendering and all those things that come from the magic of finding your link in Google search or elsewhere that has an AMP cache. And then the PWA starts up. You can use AMP components in there to make your life easier. And it's more than just publishing. The same pattern applies in more other kinds of ways. What if you've got a site that's like a lead gen site, where users are filling out this long form, one of those things with 5 different screens, your name, your address, your birthday, your neighbor's name, your dog's name, your cat's name, the name of the tree in your front yard, all those kinds of things. This happens sometimes. It can be hard for users. If you use AMP, AMP comes with nice, validated form fields, so it makes your life easier. And like with the articles just back there, imagine instead of articles, imagine pages of the form in a PWA. So you control the experience. Users can't stand it when they're working on a long form and they go to the next page and they face a long load. They abandon in those cases. In a PWA, things can load more quickly, especially if they're AMP. And you can go back and forth, you can control the screen, make it fun for the user to fill out this long form. Register now. Another idea, e-commerce. E-commerce is a new thing that's happening with AMP. Various e-commerce sites are now using AMP for all kinds of things, product pages, listing pages, up to and now also including the checkout process is just now possible also with AMP, thanks to the Payment Request API. So in this case over here, I imagine instead of your news articles, a series of product pages, which are all written with AMP, so they're fast, user isn't waiting around to actually have things load. And dynamic content is possible with AMP as well. There's AMP state, there's AMP list, there's various components that let you actually change things on the screen dynamically. So you change the number of things you're buying, the prices can change, shipping costs can change with user input, and so on and so forth. Or imagine the travel application. Instead of these articles, you've got hotels, hotel information, and you go back between hotels. So again, all possible with AMP in a PWA context. The upshot is this makes you money because the users are happy because they have a better experience. They're not abandoning the pages as much. And a lot of data shows us AMP pages tend to get better user engagement. A lot of data shows us that faster pages get better user engagement, get better conversions, lower bounce. So your users are staying on for longer on your app, and they're converting. They're buying something, or they're viewing an ad, whatever it is. Ad support in AMP is also very, very advanced these days. So you gain money from the users, and you also make money because developers are spending less time working on their app. Things are simpler for them, so you can make things more quickly, so you make money on both sides of the coin. Which, of course, isn't your motivation because you're programmers. You don't care about the money. You care about the beauty of your code, the integrity of your work. Money is just kind of one of those things that gets you rent and maybe occasional Doritos and ramen soup, or I guess kielbasa and dumplings over here. But also don't forget that, we went backwards instead of forwards. Don't forget also that this is better for you, the programmer, not just because of the money you're making now and you're retiring early or becoming a manager or something, but because you didn't just create this terrible Frankenstein web app that was a hodgepodge of various JavaScript you found on the internet and kind of copied things, pasted them together. You don't have to panic. This was something else I found in Old Town as well. Instead, you have this lovely, maintainable, elegant code that's going to work for longer, that people will like in a couple years. Future programmers at your company will see your code and they will smile instead of thinking, why did they make all this stuff? This is crazy. They'll see it, it looks easy, it's elegant and maintainable. And in conclusion, isn't life about creating something beautiful? This is your chance to do that. PWA and AMP. Thank you very much.